Hello, everybody. I'm here with Jeff. Oh, no, let me start over. See, I'm really bad at this. This is why I don't podcast. Hi, everybody. It's Brian Hawkins, Next Step Survival. And today I'm here with our very own Jeff B., contributor to Next Step Survival and guardian of the suburbs. Hi, Jeff. How you doing today?
How's it going, Brian?
So Jeff is considering getting a freeze dryer for his preparedness in his prepper pantry. And we're just going to do a little Q&A session on it. I've had a freeze dryer for a couple of years and I've got a little bit of experience at it. And we can talk about some of the pros and cons of having a freeze dryer as far as the investment and the workload and all that type of stuff and the effectiveness as far as prepping goes. So Jeff, you got a handful of questions for me, so maybe we'll just start out there.
Okay, so I hear a lot of talk about how much power it takes to run a load, and have you found that this is a real concern? And have you weighed the comparison to that versus just having your regular freezers running that run 24 hours a day?
I have not done a comparison, and I'm using the large 5 tray freeze dryer with the heavy duty oilless pump, which requires its own independent 20 amp circuit. It's still 110 volt, but it requires a 20 amp service independent from anything else. So that's the only thing you can run. That's a little upgrade to the freeze dryer. I believe, and I'm not positive, I believe the standard large, small, or medium, like from Harvest Right or something, can run off 110 and probably 15 amps. I'm not positive on that. But for the particular setup that I'm using with the heavy duty pump, I have noticed that if I run it five or say four times a month, we see about a $50 increase in our electric bill. So it's not insignificant. You know, it is for a month. So you're talking about what, 12, $13 a week or per batch, if you will. So, and that's running it honestly for a couple of days, usually like 40 hours or more, typically, depending on what you're running in there. It's not a real fast process. And that's why I usually sometimes I'll run two a week, maybe five a month, but generally I shoot for four a month because of the time consideration and once it's finished, that's when some of the work. So you have a lot of prep work as far as cooking and prep and all that kind of stuff, just like you would with canning or any other type of food preservation. And then at the end, you need to quickly uh, jar up or seal up in Mylar, however you decide to do it, and package your goods before too long because you don't want a lot of moisture getting in there after you've taken it all out. So it takes a little bit of time in the front end and in the back end. So I just try to keep it down to usually one a week.
Yeah, that kind of leads into actually the next one. How much time are you allowing, or how much time is consumed preloading, post, compared to something like canning?
Compared to canning, it takes longer. Um, for the most part, the prep work is very similar, especially if you want to pre-cook your food ahead of time because you can do raw and cooked. I prefer to do mine cooked. It just seems like the preppery thing to do because in the event of a power outage or whatever, you have food that you can just eat with some clean, drinkable water, without having to worry about cooking. Of course, we prefer our stuff warmed up anyway, but an emergency, you could eat it, without cooking if you've already cooked it. Um, as far as the prep work, the cooking and pre-freezing, that takes a little longer, like overnight. I do it. You don't have to do this. You can put your food in at room temperature and allow the freeze dryer to freeze it. I've got three freezers here at the house. In fact, I bought the third one for the freeze dryer. It's just a small stand up, and I got it where the large trays fit in there perfectly. So what I do is I take whatever I'm freeze drying, lay it out on the trays, and then freeze it overnight. That takes a lot of the work from the freeze dryer with the freezer that's already running. That just makes sense to me. And then I put frozen food in the freeze dryer just to speed things up. So it's still going to it's still going to go through the freezing mode where it's bringing the temperature up to freezing, but it's not trying to freeze room temperature food up to, whatever it goes to. It gets very cold. It's another day or another overnight and I can throw it in the freeze dryer in the morning. Typically what I do is I'll weigh it. So I'll just in the morning, even before I go to work, if it's frozen, I'll pull the tray out one at a time, weigh it, write that down on my log, throw it in the freezer, and do that for all 5 trays. I want the weight, the original weight. And then once it says it's done, or usually when it says it's done, what I do, and this is going a little beyond your question, but I take the trays out and I reverse them. So the top one is now going to the bottom and vice versa. The middle one stays in the middle because there's not a lot I can do about that. And then I also flip them, and then I also mix it up a little bit. So to keep things from getting stuck and just like toss it around a little bit, the food. And then I let it run for 2 more hours. This is after it says it's done. Oh, and I forgot, I weigh each one as well. So I'll weigh it, and then I'll run it for 2 more hours, weigh it again. If I lost any weight, I'm doing it in grams. If I lost uh, any weight in that 2 hour process, that means there was still moisture in there. And this is a very time consuming process that I know that a lot of people don't bother doing this, but I'm a little bit paranoid as far as, making sure I have all the moisture out that I can. So I'll put it back in. If it shows any moisture or weight drop at all, I'll do the same thing. I'll reverse it, put it back in, run another 2 hours. If the weight stayed the same, I know it's done. No more moisture is going to come out at this point. So that's potentially 4 hours beyond what most people would run it. And also, if I'm at work when it shuts down, it's going to continue to run until I get home. That might be 10 hours or more. So that's more time that it's running. And that's fine with me because I don't want to, I don't want to ruin my food. So it's better for me to just let it run. So I have it in the settings to where it would continue to run. I don't remember how long, but yeah, it's not a very fast process.
What has been your approach? Was it more from the prepper standpoint, long-term food storage? It just seems like there's a huge cost for people that buy these machines that are coming at it from this standpoint, where you could get that 25-year shelf life built up fairly quickly if you stayed on it. So, I mean, have you found a benefit to the long-term cycle? Because obviously you can't make 25-year shelf life batch every weekend, or you're just going to feed the whole world.
Well, first, not everything's going to last 25 years. And I obviously have no way of verifying any of that because I've only been doing this for a couple of years. So far, everything's been pretty, good. I haven't, as long as everything stays sealed, I haven't had any issues as far as quality or contamination that I know of. We've never got sick off of anything, just like canning. I originally got the freeze dryer for the long-term shelf life, for building up my prepper pantry, just like you said. At the same time, I still think it's important to rotate your food. We still rotate it. So if I have meals, whether it being something that I home canned or freeze dried or what have you, I'm trying to do the things that we would generally eat because when I first started prepping, and this is a little off topic here, we were buying all kinds of stuff that I typically don't eat. We're trying, I have like up and down in my weight continuously. The older I get, it's harder to lose the weight. So I try to eat a little bit more low carb, not complete keto, but I try to avoid the carbs. And if you have a shelves full of carbs, now how are you going to rotate it? So we end up throwing away stuff or giving away stuff before that date because even though I know it's still good, a lot of people aren't going to touch it. So if you're going to give it away, donate it or whatever, you would need to do that ahead of time. So the freeze dryer, because of it's more diverse as far as the things that you can freeze dry, as opposed to like dehydrating or something or even canning. You can go a lot closer to your daily diet, or your preferred diet. So it's easy to freeze dry things that you eat at home already. And it makes it simpler to um, rotate it. So if you have, for an example, if you have spaghetti and meatballs, like this, if you have spaghetti and meatballs already done, already freeze dried, and you want to have spaghetti and meatballs tonight, we'll use this, but we'll still make the spaghetti and meatballs. See what I'm saying? So we'll buy and cook the spaghetti and meatballs, put that in the freeze dryer, and then use this. That might seem like a lot of extra work, but I'm not depleting my long-term food storage, and at the same time, I'm keeping it rotated. I imagine this with beef meatballs in here is probably good for 2 or 3 or 5 years. I don't know for sure. I know it's good for at least 2 years because I've tried it. Or I've had it for 2 years. This one here was October of 22, 22, 23, 24. So yeah, so this is over 2 years old right now. And we eat this quite a bit, even though it's carbs. So you can also do this with the zucchini noodles too. We've tried that and it's pretty good. While I'm on this real quick, certain things aren't going to, I'm getting a little off topic here, but certain things aren't going to hydrate very well or rehydrate very well. And these meatballs, um, they're whole meatballs, even though they're small. They take forever to rehydrate and they're not perfect. So I learned that if you just cut the meatballs, and this is just meatballs, just by cutting them in half, it's a huge difference in rehydration. So it's a little extra step, cutting each meatball in half before you put it in the freezer because you don't want to wait until you've frozen it overnight to do it. So the prep ahead before you even freeze it overnight is a little bit more, but it saves a lot of trouble in the end. Certain things don't rehydrate very well.
What are some of your favorites?
Anything that makes my life simpler. So I do most of the cooking in the house. The whole meals, like taking like this isn't really a meal, but you could take something like this chicken breast. It's already seasoned, it's already cooked. You could put whatever, the onions or stuff, or let's see, I think here's a better example. This breakfast hash is what I call it. It's eggs and peppers and chicken even. And it's just like, or actually I put chicken instead of potato because like I said, I'm trying to stay away from the carbs. So I make this breakfast hash, and this is really nice and simple to make, a quick breakfast. Or this chicken fajita mix is a big one for us, and it's just chicken fajita, just like you would, after you're done putting it, done with it in the pan. I just throw it on the tray, freeze it, and dehydrate it. And now all we need to do is rehydrate it with some water and heat. So we'll put that in a pan with a little bit of water in there, and I'll just not really cooking it, but heating it up while it soaks. First, I'll let it soak for like 15, 20 minutes, and then I'll start gradually heating it up. Burn off any of that excess moisture off of there, and we got chicken fajita mix. So it's really good. But as far as like my very favorite is I have obviously I have my whole prepper pantry. It's a 12 by 12 room. I've got an old video online on YouTube. I haven't done an updated one in years, but it's pretty extensive. It's well over a year of food right now. And in the kitchen, I have a little fancier rack. It's not these metal racks like this, something that looks a little bit better in the kitchen. It's a shelving unit. And I keep jars of things to make my life easier in the kitchen. So things like this is not really one of them, but this would fit into that category is this shredded chicken. So if I'm making chicken fajitas or something and I want to use shredded or um, say barbecue chicken sandwiches or something, this would come in handy. But the things that I really like, and I have these mushrooms, and I dehydrate a lot of mushrooms, I can a lot of mushrooms, and I freeze a lot of mushrooms. All of this stuff, I do all three. And I keep these in the freezer, flash frozen, to where they'll stay loose in a bag. They don't all turn into a big block. And I really like this process now, right? With the like when they're canned, I have to open it up, use what I want, put a different lid on it, put it in the refrigerator. Because now what with these, what I'll do is I actually freeze dry a lot of these and store them in gallon jars, or no, half gallon mason jars with the big mouth on there, big mouth lid. And I'll break the seal and then take what I want. And then I have in my kitchen drawer, I have a little uh, resealer. It's a cordless, battery operated, and I'll just reseal it and I'll just stick it right back in the shelf. I don't bother with another actually O2 absorber or anything. I just do it like that because I'm going through it so quickly. It's not a big worry. Other ones are onion. I love jalapeno peppers. The same with all of this. I have it freeze dried, frozen, canned. And before that, I used to dehydrate all of this stuff. A good thing to have is these, by the way, onion and garlic will chase people out of the house. It doesn't bother me, but my wife hates it. But I love it. So the good thing about the freeze dried garlic, you have to cut it up. It's a little bit more work. You don't want to put whole garlic cloves in there. But once I freeze dry it, I can put it usually on a paper towel and take the back of a spoon and just crush it. So it's not a lot of cutting and dicing. I just crush it and use it. Then I got the celery. These are from my garden: celery, green onion, and one of my favorites. Well, I showed you the mushroom already. And then even things like cheese. Cheese is freeze dries just fine, or it freezes just fine too. But I'll use that for cooking and preps. Another thing you can do, and this is really the only thing that I freeze dry raw so far, is egg. So I have raw egg for ingredients. So I freeze dry the raw egg, and then I cook the egg if it's something for like a breakfast or something like that. If it's like for scrambled, obviously you're not going to freeze dry, over easy or anything like that.
So are you still dehydrating anything? Because I know you used to do it.
Yeah, I not as much. So, which is a shame. I gave one of my dehydrators away, and I still have two Excaliburs. One is a 9 tray, and one is like a big, inexpensive 5 tray. And I like that because the trays are deeper, so I can freeze dry larger things. I came with the 5 tray too, but I have to like take every other tray out, because they're so thin. That's something that I never heard anybody mention, that we're always talking about the Excalibur 9 tray. I love it. It's like the Cadillac of dehydrators, but it's limited on the size of the product that you can put in there. But yeah, I still use it somewhat, but mainly just because it's sitting there and I don't want it to go waste, or I'm doing two things at once. There's no feeling when you're on vacation, for me, it's usually in August and October. So in August, we generally go on vacation for the family. And then October, I always take a week, sometimes two, just for prepping. I take the harvest from a garden. I'll go to the farmer's market and just start canning every day, freeze drying every day, dehydrating every day. So I'm generating a lot of prep, a lot of buildup with the preps, and it's an awesome feeling. It's tiring. You're very tired. No TV or anything. It's just listening to podcasts and having it up loud to get through the pressure cooker, the pressure canner. All the but yeah, that's a good feeling. And having the third option, which is the dehydrator going at the same time, is you really feel like you're accomplishing a lot, but that's just more like self-satisfaction. Self-satisfaction. If I had the option of one or the other and they were the same price, it would be the freeze dryer. But you can do a lot with the dehydrator. So if you can't afford or don't want to spend to spend the money on a freeze dryer, then yeah, by all means, it's not going to last as long as freeze drying, but a dehydrator is a great tool for prepping, in my opinion.
So other than the machine itself and the electrical upgrade that you had to put in, I mean, I don't know if everybody would be in that situation like you talked about earlier, but other than the machine, did you have to set up a prep area or anything
I,
else?
already had some of the area there. I bought a freezer for just for freeze drying. Probably could have got away with just using one of the other two that I had. I already had the stainless steel prep table that I got from a restaurant that was closing. I put all that together. That was not necessary. At the same time, I don't think, and this is just my thoughts, just I haven't heard anybody mention this. I probably wouldn't want to have that in my prepper pantry because I believe and it feels like it adds moisture to the air.
Well, like you said, you've had it for a couple of years. Has it turned into a boat anchor, or do you find that you've kind of plateaued and now you're only using it during, like your fall harvest?
Well, I kind of got sick last year and I got away from using it. I got away from everything, even working, unfortunately, for our bills. I mean, we made it, but I couldn't even work for a while. So I went like 3 months in and out of the hospital. And then the recovery after that was preventing a lot of the things. And then as I started to feel better, we've spent a lot of time on other things than the prepping. Now, I will say that prepping got us through a lot of that. So without those preps, we would have been hurting way more. And that includes the emergency fund and everything else that goes with prepping, not just the food storage.
Would you do it again?
Oh yeah.
Did you find it justified for the money you put into it? I mean, are you pretty satisfied with the results?
So this is really the big question, right? So how convinced are you that you're going to need all these preps? So I have a tremendous amount of food stored away for two people, and I could probably feed a family of five for well over a year. So that sounds, at a base level, that sounds almost insane. And I honestly, in my heart, I don't think we're going to ever need it. I mean, I prep for uh, more likely events like a job loss or like what I just experienced the beginning of last year or the first half of last year. But as far as would I recommend people take an investment and go this deep into prepping, only if you want to. I tell, I usually tell people, start out with, a few weeks and move up to a few months. And if you want to continue beyond that, more power to you. It's, in my opinion, and this is going to make a lot of preppers frustrated. I think 2 weeks to a month is going to get through 99% of things that are going to go wrong unless things go really go sideways, which is possible. So is a comet striking us and just taking us all out. So, I mean, you only can prep so much. What I've done here was mostly out of the joy of it. I enjoy the prepping and I enjoy, so yeah, I would do it again for me, but I wouldn't recommend anybody do it unless that's what they want to do. In other words, I wouldn't recommend somebody do it or be so paranoid and think the world is falling apart or the sky is falling to do it because out of panic. That's not a way to prep. That's not a way to make a decision, financial decision, in my opinion. So yeah, it's a hard question to answer. If you feel better, I have a peace of mind that pantry satisfies immensely. And but at the same time, my retirement fund isn't there, and my we've really wound. I mean, we're just now trying to get our emergency fund built up, and that's another part of why that pantry's not growing. Because to me, my emergency fund is more important. It's all about priorities. But as far as recommending beyond what you think makes sense is really a personal choice. If you enjoy it and if it gives you a peace of mind, it's hard to put a value on the peace of mind. At a certain point, and to me, it's that 1 year. Actually, 6 months is probably what we're going to shoot for in the future. Is enough for us. So I've heard Todd mention this. At a certain point, enough has to be enough, and we've reached that and beyond. And even now that we've used up a bunch of our preps, it's still beyond what I really feel necessary. But it's still a peace of mind that's hard to put a price tag on. We call that food security, right?
Yes, we do. My justification and my whole goal, if I take this dive with the freeze dryer, because like you, I've got a pantry that's pretty well established and stocked, and I have the three freezers. You know, it's just, to me, to go up another level with the freeze dryer, I'm going to get there pretty quick. It seems like it's overkill unless you get involved with somebody else that can justify the time, the expense, the effort. Because
Yeah.
it's not a cheap endeavor to get into and then turn around and get right out of once you kind of get what you want. So that's where I'm at. I'm trying to weigh that realization that what am I going to do in 6 months from now?
It's definitely a commitment, right? Now, to offset the costs, a lot of people turn it into a little bit of a side gig, right? So they'll sell some of their stuff online or locally or even on Etsy. If you go on Etsy, you'll see everything from uh, freeze dried candy to freeze dried uh, greens, microgreens. You'll see, I even seen turkey hearts, freeze dried turkey hearts on there. So yeah, you can sell some of it. The Skittles seems to be very popular. I freeze dried some candy, but not a lot. And usually when I do it, because to me, the value of the prep is way beyond the, kids and the grandkids having a treat, which we can buy anywhere. So I'll just throw like a bag of Skittles and, next to the corn or something that I'm freeze drying and then let them have it. So we don't do a lot of that. I did, uh, I did do a whole bunch of ice cream sandwiches because those, and you can buy these on Etsy as well. So the thing with when you're freeze drying something like this, you have to be very careful because they're very fragile. So right in here is 8 bars. You'll notice I put the weight on there. So this is batch 56, December the 29th, 2023. And there's 8 bars and it's 308 grams. And the reason I do that is I'll put it on the scale before I open this bag. If it's 308 grams, I know this stayed sealed. No moisture got in there because the moisture would add weight. So that's another reason for trying to, be certain about, the weight and everything. And I'm going off topic again. I'm sorry. I talk a lot, but some things like these French fries, No, they didn't come out very good. For one thing, there's a high grease content or oil content in these French fries just to cook them. So I don't, they don't taste that great, but they're not bad even after 2 years. But they're not going to keep a 20 or 25-year lifespan. There's no way. The worst thing, the worst thing I ever freeze dried. Don't do it. Remember those fish sticks that you liked when you was a child? No, never freeze dry these. Oh God, I don't know what it did to these. They don't rehydrate. They just turn into mush, and somehow it ruined the taste of them as well. So, yeah, but, there's certain things you'll learn as you go, and that's another thing about rotation. Um, if you just keep freeze drying from watching YouTube or whatever, or from what you just want, and you never crack it open and rehydrate it and eat it, it would really suck if you learned that those fish sticks are almost unedible after you've done, dozens of jars and put them in your pantry. So it's just trial and error. Certain things work well, some things don't. I know I went way off and I forgot what your question was, but did I answer it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
What else you got?
I think that's it. That's all the questions I actually wrote down. So it's just more of my thoughts to figure out if I want to do this. So what do you think? Should I do it?
Let me bring up some extras, okay? Some things I've actually already written an article on this a year ago, and I never published it, and I was going over it and updating it for this video. And there are other costs involved in not just the initial investment of buying the freeze dryer, but keep in mind that you're going to need either a bunch of jars or a bunch of Mylar bags, O2 absorbers, things like that. You're going to need a way to seal these. In fact, in my experience, you want to have two ways to seal it because one time my jar sealer, which was a an expensive, oh, I don't remember the brand, but it's one of those vacuum sealers that you use for the bags, but it's also got the pump for the jar, the lid adapter. That died on me at the end of a freeze drying session, and I had no way to freeze dry my jar or seal my jars. And I kept it going an extra day, 24 hours, just running this freeze dryer, trying to get one locally. And there's no such thing locally. Apparently, everywhere I called or everywhere I went, no such thing. I ended up doing what I should have did the day before and just putting them in Mylar bags and sealing them that way. And then I end up when I replaced that, I bought two because I'm not going to run out again. So I'm not going to get be in that situation again. So the whole adage, you know, one is none, two is two, or two is one. One is none, two is one. Yeah. That applies to this big time because of the investment of time that you have involved in this. Same with the sealer, the Mylar bag sealer. I have one, I don't know, I bought it probably a decade ago. It's and it just you pinch it. It's like a handle, like a curling iron, but it's heavy duty and it's made for Mylar bags, and that works great. But it's the heating element, and I've used it tons, and I know eventually it's going to go out. So I bought two more, another one of those, and then one of that's the big sealer. Those are added expenses that you want to think about if you don't already have those things, and maybe having backups. Maybe not backups to your backups, but you want to have something. But you should probably already have a lot of this stuff for your pantry to begin with if you're, a dedicated long-term prepper. And the same with like a scale. You want to have a couple of decent scales, in my opinion. You want grams because grams seem to be a little bit more
But
accurate.
you're going to have those costs whether you're canning, dehydrating. Um, you still need similar equipment as far as the vacuum sealers and that kind of thing. So, which I already have. I got the dehydrator. I've got all the vacuum sealing. Um, so it's just my main goal would be to I really want to get into the meat side of freeze drying. And so I'm going to start studying that. And if that would probably be my determining factor if that works out.
So I know we're going long here and I talk a lot, but let me get into the meat just a little bit. You can do it raw or you can do it cooked. I prefer cooked. I explained why, because I just, it's easier to pair without the need of electricity. Also, certain things don't freeze dry well. Anything with a high sugar content isn't going to freeze dry well, and things with a high oil or grease content isn't going to freeze dry well. So if you're doing something like hamburger, uh, you want to get rid of as much grease as you can. And this is kind of up for debate because I hear both sides of the story. Some say it's not an issue, some say it is. I prefer to stay on the safe side and not let my food go to waste because I listen to people that said that it's not an issue. So a lot of people recommend 90 the 90-10 ground beef, which is 90% lean, 10% fat. It's way more expensive. It's in fact it's crazy expensive if you're trying to fill five large freeze dryer trays. What we've started doing and what I've got to do actually tonight is cook up a bunch of ground turkey or making chili, a lot of chili, a big stock pot of it. And that's going to be our next two cycles plus dinner tonight. Our next two cycles of the freeze dryer. So we're going to make a bunch of homemade chili and freeze dry it. So that's one alternative. The ground turkey, and honestly, we don't notice a difference. You think you would, but I've made it before with the ground turkey, and it doesn't seem to matter just to cut the cost. Also, pork. Most porks won't. Well, in my opinion, they have too much grease and fat in there, and which just sucks because it's like my favorite food group, right? So you definitely don't want to try to freeze dry sausage or bacon, but even like a really good pork roast, that marbled fat in there, it's probably not going to freeze dry well for you. It's not going to last very long when you do freeze dry it. And honestly, that stuff's hard not to eat when it's right out of the crock pot or something. So yeah, meats are good, but probably chicken, fish, and other poultry like turkey and that will be ideal for you. So there's something to consider. But canning on the other side, home canning, yeah, I've got it all: pork loin, pork roast, uh, ground beef, just a 80-20 stuff, chicken, boneless, uh, chicken thighs, chicken breast, all that. Home canning is really good for meat too. Way easier, honestly, and cheaper than a freeze dryer, and way easier to eat too because you don't have to rehydrate it. You just open a can and there you go, you got food.
So when you're jarring or you're canning stuff coming out of the freeze dryer, do you have to do the same cleaning process with the jars as you do with canning?
I don't know that you have to, but I do. I sanitize them. I run them through the sanitation or the sanitizing on our cycle on our dishwasher here at home. And then I use the heat to dry them. And then I let them set and acclimate, come to room temperature before I do everything. Because if you don't want to put it in a hot right after it's out of there, it's too hot. So I let it come to room temperature because, to keep the moisture level down. I don't use an O2 absorber. I think that's a no-no when you're using a vacuum sealed thing. I'm not really sure of the science, but I'm just trying to stay safe. And to be honest, I just don't know all the science. So, but I do use a O2 absorber and I vacuum seal. So these onions, no vacuum seal. These or only vacuum sealed. The spaghetti and meatballs, it's got an O2 absorber in there. It's hard to see because it's on the top. Trust me, it's in there. So I use the O2 absorbers, I think 300 cc's, just as a added but I don't know that it's necessary. This doesn't have one because originally it did, but I opened one in the kitchen and one in the pantry, and then I just made them into one. And since we're using this all the time, there's no need for that because we'll be several times before that jar is empty, cracking it open, resealing it. It's going to be used up quickly. And other than that, I think we've pretty much covered everything. I did want to mention one thing just to close it up. A lot of us have pets. Pets are very important members of our family for a lot of us. I have a 90-pound pit bull mix or whatever. It's an XL bully, and he's fearless. Fireworks, gunshots, storms. I had a Sheltie that she would be shaking and stuff with us. Storms in the 4th of July fireworks. And we have gunshots all the time. I had to buy her a special jacket, a thunder jacket or whatever it was. This dog don't care. He does not care about any of that. Two things bother my dog. One is when the power goes out and it's too quiet. If there's no noise, for some reason he gets upset. He will not, he wants to like be right here with me. He's just like scared. The other thing is that freeze dryer. I can turn on the freeze dryer and he knows just by seeing me working in front of it, he's already like, I know what you're doing. You're going to scare me for the next 2 days. And then as soon as, and it goes through the freezing cycle and that's quiet. As soon as that pump kicks on, 2 seconds later, you hear that dog door slam because he runs through that dog door so fast and he won't come back in until you haul him back in. And then he'll either come in here, which is on the other side of the house, my studio, or at bedtime, he'll go in the bedroom, but he wants the door shut. And he'll let you know he wants the door shut. So, because he's afraid of it. So that noise for some reason bothers him. So that might be something to consider if you have a dog or a pet that is afraid of loud noises. That's something to consider. Also, that might determine whether you get the heavy duty pump or the standard one. It's cheaper for the standard one, and from what I understand, they use less electricity and are quieter. They just require oil changes, which is only takes a couple of minutes. It's not really that big deal. So I think that's about it. Did you have anything else? Any last thoughts?
No, that's good enough for me to carry on the conversation with the next person. So no, I appreciate your time and answering the questions. And if anybody's got some magic answers, put them in the comment section.
Sure. And you can find Jeff B in several places with one is Todd's email list. I've known that's how I've gotten to know Jeff, and we become really good friends, and we talk offline a lot. And how long have you been on that list?
Since
It's
day
been
one.
it's been years, right? I
Yeah.
don't even
Yeah.
know how long we've been on that, but it's been years.
Yeah.
And so I'll put a link in the show notes and in the article to Todd's email list. It's got a bunch of amazing preppers on there that uh, run back and forth with each other in an email group, and then some other benefits as well. I won't go into detail. And you can also find him with some guest posts on nextstepsurvival.com. He's done some articles for us, and it's always good stuff. So I really appreciate you coming on here and helping us put this stuff together, Jeff. I think this will help people with the same considerations as far as buying, investing in a freeze dryer and whether or not it's good for preppers, worth it or not.
Glad we got to do it.
All right. Appreciate it. We'll see everybody later. Brian Hawkins, Next Step Survival. We're out. Can you hear this?